Hello everyone and welcome back once again. This is your history teacher here, and this time I am here with a new chapter of grade 8 history part 3rd, that is ruling the countryside. Students, this chapter ruling the countryside discusses how the company came to colonize the countryside, organize revenue resources, redefine the rights of people and produce the crops it wanted. Students, this chapter further elaborates on the topics that I mentioned earlier with suitable examples so that you can understand the concepts easily. So, let's start. So, the students, the first topic of your chapter number 3 is the company become the Diwan. Students, before discussing this topic, the first thing that you must need to know is that what is Diwan or whom do we call Diwan? Students, the word Diwan means an administrative office, or you can say a finance minister. So students, on 12 August 1765, the then Mughal emperor appointed the East India Company as the Diwan of Bengal, means the chief administrative officer or the chief finance ministry of Bengal. And as I said, as being a Diwan, the company became the chief financial administrator or the chief finance minister of Bengal. So students, after becoming the Diwan of Bengal, the company came to colonize the countryside, organize revenue resources, redefine the rights of people and produce the crops it wanted so that they could yield enough revenue to meet the growing expenses of the company. Now students, let's understand that what are the revenue sources for the company. Students, the company's main aim was to increase the revenue in order to buy fine cotton and silk cloth as cheaply as possible. And as you all know, that company got the Diwani rights over Bengal on 12 August 1765. So the company started extracting more and more revenue out of it and used various measures or you can say steps to get it, but still they saw itself primarily as a trader. And students, within a span of few years, the value of the goods bought by the company in Bengal got doubled. And students, before 1865, the company purchased goods in India by importing gold and silver from Britain. But now, after 17 August 1865, now the revenue collected in Bengal could finance the purchase of goods for exports. And students, due to this, the artisanal production of artists was in a great decline in India, and even agriculture cultivation shows great signs of collapse in India, due to which Bengal economy was facing a deep crisis. Peasants and craftsmen were not getting the proper amount of their sell. And students, the condition of the Bengal became worse in 1770 when a terrible famine killed about 10 million people in Bengal. But students, no one gave attention to the plight of affected people as revenue was under the control of the British, and they didn't pay heed to any of the matter related to peasants, as their main task was to make money by trade. Now students, the next topic is the need to improve agriculture. Students, as I said in the earlier section, that due to the various measures of extracting more and more revenue from the Indian farmers and peasants, the economy of Bengal was facing a deep crisis, and peasants and craftsmen were not getting the proper amount of their sell. So, in 1793, the company introduced the permanent settlement. And students, under this settlement, the Rajas and the Talukdar means an Indian landholder, were only recognized as Jamindars, and they were asked by the Britishers to collect rent from the peasants and pay revenue to the company. And students, the amount of the revenue to be paid was fixed permanently and it would not increase in future. And the Jamindars were only recognized as the collectors of the revenue, and it was assumed that they would invest money to improve the crop production and fertility of soil. And due to this, the Jamindars didn't pay attention to the condition of the land and tried to keep more and more money left after collection. And as a result of greed for more revenue, they blindly exploited the land resources. Now students, let's discuss the problems created by this permanent settlement. Students, as I said earlier that under the permanent settlement, the Rajas and Talukdar were recognized as Zamindar, and as a result of greed for more revenue, they blindly exploited the land resources. So soon the company officers discovered that the Jamindars were not investing in the improvement of land because the revenue was very high. As a result, numerous Jamindars were sold off at auctions organized by the company, as anyone who failed to pay the revenue lost his Jamindari. So students, the Jamindars were not interested in the improvement of land, which led to reduce the production of crop. But with the rise in crop expansion and prices of crops in 19th century, the income of the Britishers was not increasing, and this concerned them a lot. So, because of the less revenue collection, British tried some other new method of revenue generation such as Mehalwadi system and Roytwadi system. And students, as I said, under the permanent settlement, the amount of revenue was so high. So, in the villages, the cultivator found the system, means the permanent settlement, extremely oppressive. So they took a loan from the money lender in order to pay the revenue to the Zamindar. And students, when these cultivators failed to pay the rent, then they were evicted from their land. And that's how this permanent settlement created a lots of problems. So the Britisher tried some other new method of revenue generation from the farmers. Now students, the next topic is a new system was devised. Students, as we discussed the different problems under the permanent settlement system. So the company officers decided to change this revenue system. As a result, in 1822, Holt Mackenzie devised a new system of revenue collection. And students, this system of revenue collection that was introduced by Holt Mackenzie was introduced in North India and came to be known as Mehalwadi settlement. And under Holt Mackenzie directions, collectors of different places went from villages to villages, inspecting the land, measuring the fields, and recording the customs and rights of different peoples. And students, this Mehalwadi system gave the revenue collection work to the village headman, that was also known as Mahal that time, instead of Jamindar, and the revenue was not fixed permanently. This was the main point of this revenue system, means Mehalwadi, that the revenue was not fixed permanently. And students, the charge of collecting the revenue and paying it to the company officials was given to the village headman, means Mahal, rather than Zamindar. And that's why this system came to be known as Mehalwadi system. Now students, the next heading is the Munro system. Students, as we discussed in earlier section that the British officer Holt Mackenzie devised a new system of revenue collection in 1822, and the system that he introduced came to be known as Mehalwadi settlement. And students, this Mehelwadi settlement introduced in North India. In the same way, Britishers introduced a settlement in the British territories in the south, and this new system of settlement in the south was known as rightward or rightward system. And students, slowly and gradually this rightward system extended all over South India. And students, do you know who introduced this system? Students, this system was initiated by Captain Alexander Reid and Thomas Munro. That's why this system is also known as Munro System. And students, under this settlement, the rights, means to say the cultivators, were directly involved for the collection of revenue, and the revenue was fixed after the proper assessment of individual land. But students, in order to increase the income from land by introducing the Munro system, the revenue official fixed the amount of revenue so high. Even the amount is so much high that the peasants were unable to pay. So the rights, means the cultivator, fled from the countryside, and the villages became deserted in many regions of South India. Now students, as you can see here, the next heading, crops for Europe. Student, by the late 18th century, the company tried to expand the cultivation of opium and indigo. Students, do you know what are opium and indigo? Students, opium is a dried latex that is basically obtained from the seed capsules of the opium poppy plant. And students, this opium is used to produce drugs, whereas the indigo is a blue colored dye that is basically used to color the clothes. And students, during the late 18th century, the demand of the two, means opium and indigo, was very high in European markets. So the company tried to expand the cultivation of these two crops in India, and due to this, the company forced the Indian cultivators in various parts of India to produce other crops, like they forced the cultivators in Bengal to produce jute, similarly in Assam to produce tea, similarly in United Provinces, means in Uttar Pradesh, sugarcane, similarly in Punjab, wheat, cotton in Maharashtra and Punjab, and rice in Madras. Now students, does color have a history? Students, as I said, that the company forced the Indian cultivators to cultivate indigo in their field, and this indigo is used to color the clothes. And students, why the company forced the Indian cultivators to produce indigo in their field? Because this indigo is a blue colored dye that was produced from a plant called indigo, and it is used to dye the clothes. And students, as I said, that time indigo was highly demanded in Europe. So to get the indigo cultivation, the company introduced the tin kathia system. And students, under this tin kathia system, peasants had to cultivate indigo on 3/20th part of their land. Now students, as a result, because of the production of the cash crops and indigo, which had to be grown in the more fertile land, the farmers were left with little fertile region to grow. And due to this, these crops reduced the production of food crops. And students, you will be surprised to know that India was the biggest supplier of indigo in the world that time. And students, this indigo cultivation was one of the reasons for the poor condition of farmers. Now students, as I said earlier, that India was the biggest supplier of indigo in the world in 19th century. Now here is a question, that why the demand for Indian indigo in the European market is so high. Students, this indigo plants requires tropical climate, and by the 13th century, Indian indigo was being used by cloth manufacturers in Italy, France and Britain to dye clothes. Due to this, small amounts of Indian indigo also reached in the European markets, and its price was very high due to its fine quality. And students, as I said, that the price of the indigo in the European market was very high because of its quality. So, therefore, the European cloth manufacturers had to depend on another plant called wood. And students, this wood is a type of plant that produces dyes of violet and blue color. But the dye that was produced from the wood was pale and dull as compared to indigo. That's why by the 18th century, the demand for Indian indigo grew further. And students, the increased demand of indigo in the European market became the sole reason of the heavy industrialization in Britain. So, in order to fulfill the demand of indigo, British used their colonies in tropical region and mainly in Africa and India, as the availability if land and cheap labor were easily available. But students, while the demand for indigo increased, the existing supplies from the West Indies and the America collapsed with each other for various reasons, due to which between 1783 and 1789 the production of indigo in the world fell by half. Now students, the next heading is Britain turns to India. Students, as I said, that the demand of the Indian indigo was very high in the European market due to its fine quality. That's why the East India Company in India tried their best to expand the area under indigo cultivation. So, gradually the indigo trade grew very rapidly. So, the commercial agents and the officers of the company began investing in indigo production. And students, when the company officers got very high profits from the indigo cultivation, so they came to India to become indigo planters. Students, the indigo plant that we are talking about in this section is this one here in this image. This is the plant indigo from which the blue color dye is obtained. Now students, the question is that how was indigo cultivated? Students, there are two main systems of indigo cultivation, and that are niche and royalty. Students, within the system of niche cultivation, the planter produced indigo in lands that he directly controlled or rented from the zamindars. Now students, let's discuss the problem that the planter faced under this niche cultivation. Students, as we discussed that under this niche system, the planter produced indigo in lands that he directly controlled or he rented the land from the zamindars. But students, under this cultivation, the planters found it difficult to expand the area. Students, because this cultivation needed fertile and big lands, and that time it was almost difficult to get big areas as they were already highly populated. So students, if they wanted to expand their areas for indigo cultivation, then they had to evict population, which led to conflicts among them. Now students, the second reason is under niche cultivation on a large scale required many plows and bullocks. And even investing on purchase and maintenance of plows was a very big problem for them. And students, the another reason is that at the same time, when indigo cultivated, the same time is for the cultivation of rice crops too. That is why plows were not available on rent too. That's why till the late 19th century, planters were therefore reluctant to expand the area under niche cultivation. Now students, the next system of indigo cultivation is Rawat system. Students, in this Rawat system, the planters forced the Rawats, means to say the village farmers, to sign a contract, means an agreement or satta. And students, the Rawats who signed the contract got cash money advances from the planters at low rate of interest to produce indigo. And once when the crop harvested and was delivered to the planter, then a new loan was sanctioned to the Rawats. And students, this cycle starts all over again. But students, slowly and gradually, the peasants, means to say the Rawats, realized how the loan system was, because now they felt that they got very low price for the indigo they produce, and this cycle of loans never ended. And even they also realized that after an indigo harvest, the land couldn't be sown with rice, which the peasants preferred, as indigo production reduced the fertility of soil. Now students, the next heading is the Blue Rebellion and After. Students, do you know what is the meaning of rebellion? Students, the word rebellion means opposition, means refusing to accept rules. Students, as I said earlier, that under these two systems of indigo cultivation, means niche and royalty system, the peasants got very low price for the indigo that they produce, and the cycle of the loans never ended. And even after an indigo harvest, the land couldn't be sown with the rice, which the peasants preferred, because the indigo production reduced the fertility of soil. So students, in March 1859, thousands of Rawats, means to say farmers in Bengal, refused to grow indigo. So due to this, all the people who worked for the planters were socially boycotted, and the Gomsthas, means the agent of the planters who came to the village to collect the rent, were beaten up by the Rawats, means to say by the farmers. And students, in fact, in this boycott, the local zamindars and the village men also supported the farmers in their rebellion against the planters. And students, as the rebellion spread, Rawats refused to pay rents to the planters and attacked indigo factories. And the Rawats believed that the British government would support them in their struggle against the planters. And students, as you all know, that after the revolt of 1857, the British government was already very worried. So they don't want the possibility of another popular rebellion. So as the rebellion spread, all the intellectuals from Calcutta rushed to the indigo districts. So the government set up the Indigo Commission to inquire into the system of indigo production, and the commission declared that indigo cultivation was not profitable for Rawats, means farmers. Hence, they could refuse to produce indigo in future. And that's how, after this indigo rebellion or Blue Rebellion collapsed in Bengal after this revolt. And due to this, all the planters from the Bengal now shifted their operation in Bihar. But meanwhile, the same time when Mahatma Gandhi returned from South Africa, a peasant from Bihar persuaded him to visit Champaran and see the deplorable conditions of the indigo cultivators. So, in 1917, Mahatma Gandhi visited there, means in Champaran district of Bihar, and led a movement against the indigo planters. And students, do you know, this is the first movement of Gandhiji in India. Now students, with this topic here, your chapter number 3 is completed. Now I will be come back soon with another chapter. Till then, stay home, stay safe and stay healthy.